welcome back to the Closers Inner Circle podcast with your host, Denise Griffitts and Ben Gay III. In this episode of the Closers Inner Circle podcast, we dive into the essential questions that sales professionals use to write that down, uncover their clients' true needs and their priorities. And Ben and I will discuss how to move beyond service level conversations by asking about clients' biggest challenges, connecting immediate needs to long-term goals, and probing for priorities and barriers. We've talked about this some in other episodes, but it does bear repeating. We're also going to, if we have time, explore the power of open-ended questions that encourage clients to share what they really, really want, even before they can often realize it themselves. So tune in for practical strategies to deepen your client conversations, close more deals, and build lasting relationships. And be sure to send us your burning sales questions. We do our best to answer as many of them as we can each week. In fact, Ben just mentioned in the excuse me, the virtual green room that he has some. Ben, good morning. It's Wednesday, and you said we have questions.
We do, and subjects that came up during the week. I've gotten pretty good at taking notes. So, of things that people are interested in. Of course, I answered them when I was talking to them, but I find that they raise things that other people are also interested in.
And I
Uh,
have to say, when I say we, I'm not really framing this as the royal we. Ben answers these questions. I just sit back and take notes. So,
well, you're the backbone of most of what I know about podcasting. A lot of my friends have referred to you. Just think the world of you. And by the way, I'm going to make this public. I had a note to tell you separately, but I'll make it public. I just want to congratulate you for how you've expanded. I know you've been at this 17 or 18 years, and you're in the top 1.5% of all podcasts on earth. I find that rather amazing.
me too.
And yeah, yeah, I bet you do. There must be times you think, how'd that happen? But but in the last year or so, you've expanded that beyond that. You brought on sponsorships. Great idea for monetizing the podcast, and I know you'll cover that in your book when it's finished.
Yep.
The Closers Part 4, and then inspirational things you've been posting in the last few months. It's beyond, you have to listen at a certain time or you miss it. I get good things from you all week long, and that's very intelligent, clever on your part for business purposes. But from a recipient of them, I just want to thank you because I get inspiration from them, and I, from time to time, do research, which is different than stealing, and lift some of your
Locating.
ideas.
We don't steal, we relocate.
Yeah, lift some ideas and move them to another area. But anyway, I just wanted to congratulate you in case sometimes what you and I do is semi-lonely, and by that I mean I'm not surrounded by an adoring crowd like I used to be when running a big office in a big building with staff on hand. So sometimes in our situations, nobody comes by and gives you an atta girl. And I want you to know I've noticed what you're doing with your followers and listeners and so on. And it's remarkable, and I want to congratulate you.
Thank you. And you're right. And we don't really know what we're doing, if it's going to land, how is it landing? And I just keep going. I just
Yep.
keep putting things out there that make sense to me and hope that they're helpful and hopeful for other people. But I'm glad to hear that they're actually landing, because and I'll tell you, I got this attitude. I wouldn't even call it an idea, this attitude from you. You just go, go and go. Keep going. Don't give up. You and Dr. Napoleon Hill, take action. And I finally pulled my head out of my clouds and started taking more action. So I really appreciate you telling me that.
Well, it shows. It really shows. And for our listeners, that's important. Stay noticed, stay out there. I post a lot of things that I find interesting or inspirational or what have you. What I'm really saying is, hi, I'm Ben Gay and I'm still alive. So, keep me in mind when you want fill in the blank. I'm still here. And as a result, there's a lot of people who follow and comment and so on. Here's a little tip that a lovely lady named Lisa Mannion gave me. You may be a friend of hers too.
I am, and she's been on my show, and we stay in touch. She's terrific, and
Yeah,
her
she
book
really
is
is.
wonderful.
She taught me to, I don't do it every time, but to end comments, statements, etc., with a question. And that invites response and input from other people. So every time I end a Facebook or a LinkedIn or whatever, and there's a question there, that's credited to Lisa Mannion because she taught it to me, and I quickly discovered that she was right. It encourages feedback one way or the other. Speaking of feedback, as we've discussed, we have a new book on the way, besides yours and a couple others, uh, about moi. Uh, Jason Williford finally talked me into cooperating. He's doing the work, but I have to go through the interviews and edit it and so on.
Yes,
Uh,
but remember that I have encouraged you or nagged you, whichever you prefer, for a couple of years about writing that book.
yeah, he must be a better salesman than you because he pushed
Well,
me
I
over
wasn't
the
going to write it. So,
he pushed me over the edge. But anyway, the end result is we're writing a book. Working title is Ben Gay the Third at the top, and then Born to Sell dot 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 just like you. Now that may change, but I think those three phrases are going to be somewhere on the cover, and then his name and my name and so on. And the point is, as several of my friends, most notably William Penpatrick, my first business mentor and boss at Holiday Magic Cosmetics, used to say, if Ben Gay can do it, anyone can do it. And that's true of selling. If I can sell and become one of the top salespeople on the planet, so can you. And the book is going to cover a lot of that and reveal some things. Yesterday, I did an interview with him, and I thought, while I was talking, I thought, should you be saying this out loud? This is going to appear in the book.
I
Uh,
know.
you
But you
can't.
you do have editorial,
Yeah,
rights.
but I promised him that we may correct a word or the phrasing of a
Um,
sentence, but if it happened and I remember it or he asked the right question, it'll be in the book. But anyway, I said all that to say this. If any of you listening have things you would like to know about selling and me, the great Ben Gay the Third, whatever, send me an email, BFG3, that's the number three, BFG3 at directcon.net. And the what I would want is talk about this or what about this or I've always wondered about whatever crosses your mind doesn't mean it's going to be in the book, but it may well be or trigger some idea. And if it's a great question, we'll even give you credit for it by name. So help us
oh,
along
well,
because
in that case, I want my name in there too.
well, there you go, and I'm sure you'll write a bunch of questions.
Oh, I've already got them written. And they're straight out of this podcast and
Yeah,
of course, the years that I've known
I'll
you.
make
But
sure
yeah,
Gigi doesn't read the book.
oh,
I'll tell her the project was canceled. But anyway,
well,
be
yeah, but you can't do that because then I will go to Gigi and say, he's lying to you, right?
yeah.
Can't do
Uh,
it.
be I went in to pick up some pills at the grocery store, the pharmacy yesterday, and there's a sweet young lady who I'd never met behind the counter, and she said I was picking up one for me, one for Gigi, and she wanted my birthday. I gave it to her. And then she wanted Gigi's birthday. And for some reason, I have a mental hang up. It's May 27th or 28th, 1952. So I guessed wrong. Well, I didn't notice, but standing next to her, the next check stand over, was a lady, funny lady I've had several encounters with, including one where I didn't know Gigi's birthday. And finally, I figured it out because I was within a day or two and we solved the problem. But then Gigi walked in while I was concluding it, and this lady who I just met looks up and says, "He doesn't even know your birthday." I said, "You rat fink," which is what I now call her, rat
I
fink.
think.
Yeah. But anyway, I'm telling this girl that I don't know I'm not sure it's either May 27th, May 28th. And from beside me behind the cash register, I hadn't noticed her. I hear, "I'm telling."
It's, see, Gigi has friends.
Yeah, everywhere
I
in
know.
Placerville, everywhere. Uh, when we first got together and I was just up here and I'd come off a different period in my life with ethics and all sorts of things, found this little hidden away restaurant and that I didn't even know was there, tucked behind a grocery store. Its sign says, "Cleverly hidden behind Rayleigh's." Rayleigh's is the grocery store. So I went in there to get a hamburger or whatever. And I looked around and I thought, my, what an interesting little hideaway. No one would find you here. Again, that's from my old life. But it crossed my mind. This is an interesting little hideaway. And from the kitchen came, "Where's Gigi?" I said, well, I guess it's not there is no hideaway in Placerville, California, where they don't know Gigi.
And you're
So,
not allowed to be out without her.
yeah, I must have been sent on an errand or
Oh.
something. But anyway, if you got something for the book or something you like covered,
Even on here, even on the podcast, because
absolutely
we're going to be doing some cross purposing for the book and for the podcast.
excellent. Well, make it easy for us. As I said, Jason Williford is doing most of the writing, all of the writing originally, and I will edit for grammar, not for stories. I told him if it came out of my mouth, he's free to write it down. Uh, but it's an interesting experience. I've written, co-written, ghost-written, and written 35 books, but never anything approaching a biography. And it's an entirely different thing. I can write the others detached. I know some stuff, I'll put it on the paper. When you're talking about yourself and your family and your parents and how you got started and your failures and uh, setbacks along the way, it puts a different spin on it. So that's enough said on that. You got the email BFG3 at directcon, short for direct connect dot net. And as Denise just said, that's questions for the book, but as always, questions for here too. Maybe put in the subject line something that'll catch my eye because I get hundreds of emails every day and I'm quick with the delete button. So put questions or questions for book or questions for
Yeah.
podcast in the subject line. That would be helpful. All right.
And
Go.
Ben, I have to tell you very quickly, I'm, off on a tangent now, but I'm so glad that you mentioned that part about the autobiography. I know you've written a lot of books and ghostwritten, and you do a lot of writing. My biggest hang up when I started writing the Closers Part 4, podcasting as marketing, is that I didn't want to tell my story, but I have to.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
story is actually central to why this book is being written. And I was very uncomfortable having to write why I started it, why I did this, blah, blah, blah. I was like, that's an awful lot of me, I. But then I realized it had to happen. And I calmed down, but some, not much, but some.
Yeah. Yeah. I know the feeling. It cuts a little close to the bone. I'm forever being asked in interviews and so on. Oh, how did you get started in multi-level marketing with Holiday Magic? Well, the answer is I looked in the newspaper and saw an ad. But the
And
real
starving
reason,
wasn't an option.
yeah,
There's that.
I was looking in the newspaper because I was starving and had a wife I was supposed to be putting through nursing school. And so, did you want to change the world? Did you want to? No, I wanted to make more money next week.
Right.
That was that was the beginning and end of my deep thinking. So Anyway, back to the list of things I've taken during the week. I got a lot of last week and the tail end of the week before, a lot of feedback for some bizarre reason on Jeff Bezos' $50 million wedding. Uh,
Yeah, and I think we agreed that that was just none of our business.
yeah, A, it's none of our business.
Yeah.
B, it's sort of amusing. Picture him as a milkman. Would he have gotten her? Uh,
And would
picture
she have done what she's done to her face and body?
Yeah,
Poor
and
thing.
then and yeah, that cuts both ways. Remove $100 billion from his net worth. Would she be dating him? No.
No, no.
Yes, etc. But they were hung up on the $50 million wasted on this wedding, and how terrible is that? Uh, for what it's worth, just to give you a different way of looking at it, what it did was it lightened two people who were full of themselves of $50 million. Where'd
And
it
it's
go?
where did that money get spread around?
Yeah,
I
where
mean,
did
that
it
money
go?
was everywhere, down to the guy who was picking up the trash behind the flower boys or girls or whatever they were.
Absolutely.
Everybody
So
made a little bit or a lot of money.
I don't think it was $50 million wasted. I think it was
Yeah.
$50 million redistributed by his and her uh, with his or her permission. But that's what I was going to say. The catering company, the people who rented out the venues, uh,
Right.
all the way down to when a few thousand people leave a venue, there's a bunch of trash. So overtime for the trash collectors and so on. It didn't go into thin air. So I find it's not that he was being benevolent with the $50 million, but the end result was good. And if they ever get divorced, I hope they have $100 million divorce party. Spread another 100 million around, and that was the real message on that. So if you're one
Yeah.
of the
I'm
people
glad you
uh,
brought that up because, people, that's a lot of money. It's not our money. And it went into other pockets. So what's the problem?
yeah, and your first response there is perhaps most profound. It's not your money,
Right.
you know, but it's not your money, and it was a mass uh, redistribution of money with the owner's consent. So
Exactly.
why would we care where it goes? But say a quiet little prayer for the caterers and the ministers and the uh, venue people, the hotels, and all the spill. And 50 million is what he and she allegedly spent on the wedding. That doesn't count all the rich people who came to watch this and spent lots of money themselves in their hotel.
No, I didn't
And
even think about them. I
yeah,
didn't pay much attention to it. It's just not my thing. But I
I
was like,
didn't either,
it's
but
like,
I was
this isn't
surprised.
our money. What the heck?
I was really surprised how many people cared. I've heard directly on the phone in emails from, I'm guessing, 50 people, which is a lot of people on an obscure subject that, like you say, it's none of our business and I don't care. But I got to thinking about it. I thought, no, it's good. It's very good. I hope you find something else stupid to blow $50 million on that you have to hire regular human beings to do. And so, anyway, there's that.
And going
And
back to salesmen, can you imagine how many people? Look, we can supply the paper products, we can supply the trash bag. That salespeople were lined up for a year before this happened. They
absolutely,
were working it, so God bless them.
absolutely, everybody. It's like when the Super Bowl comes to town, people say, well, the owners made so and so. Maybe some city ought to say, we don't want the Super Bowl. No, what they want is the benefits that come with having a 500,000 people in town that wouldn't have been there otherwise, who have to eat 3 meals a day and have some drinks and rent rooms and so on. So there's a real benefit, assuming it's not something bizarre that destroys your town. There's a real benefit in drawing a crowd with money. This is off subject, but when Gigi and I got married some 30 years ago, we
She must really like you.
yeah, Yeah, I think so. And I keep the car keys in my pocket.
Does Gigi ever listen to us? I kind of hope not. 'Cause
Sometimes, but she's not listening now. If you really listen to what I say in each call, you can tell if she's there or not.
oh, okay. I'll
There is
start
a
paying more attention.
there is a little tightening up of the subject matter if she's there. During the book interviews, I've had some moments like that. Gigi is I'm sort of embarrassed to say, but she's my third wife. And when Jason said, "Now, you were married before Gigi, weren't you?" And I said, "Yes." And I looked over my shoulder. Gigi wasn't there. So he said, "Well, tell me about them." And I started through the other two women. And then I saw a movement on my right eye, and I glanced over. Gigi's there. And the stories immediately tightened up. Now, she knew both
She
ladies.
knows these stories.
She went to school with one of them, and by coincidence, with the second one, and became a good friend of my first wife, Marcia. The rules I have are because of those two talking to Marcia. When I asked her, it's talking to Gigi. Well, they were talking to Gigi. Marcia and Carlotta were talking to her. And so when I asked her to marry me, we were in love. And no one's ever surprised, I don't think, when they're asked to be married. That was sort of what the game that was going on was. But I said, honey, let's make it official. Let's get married. And she said, okay, but we have to talk. And I thought,
Uh-oh.
I wasn't counting on that.
No.
So I said, about what? And she said, well, I know Marcia and I know Carlotta, and they've been talking to me and they're pulling for us and everything. I'm thinking, I bet. But she said, there are a few little things we got to do. No local clients. That came, I'm sure, from Marcia when I didn't know any better in Marin County. I had lots of local clients, and we lived right there in the middle of them. And that changes how you behave, where you behave, who you're seen with, and so on. So she said, no business in the house. She apparently had heard of that great big house filled with people drinking free liquor and spilling things and so on. And I'm going, oh, okay, okay. And no speeches within 50 miles of home. I said, how far away is Lake Tahoe? She said 60 miles. I said, okay, that's doable. And I think there were a couple other things, but those were the big three. Well, it turned out they were a total blessing. No speeches within 50 miles. People go to Tahoe for national conventions and so on. That didn't crimp my style at all. No local clients in Placerville. That's not really a threat. I didn't think the hardware store was going to bring me in for $20,000 to talk to their 5 employees, all of whom I know socially. So it's hard to be a prophet in your own hometown. And no business at the house. And that was really great. I didn't realize the infringement that was on the whole family. And I can proudly say no client, no supplier, unless they were personal friends first, has ever been in our home. And so I like to keep it that way. Anyway, that was a little tip that I got from her. And the next thing on the list is one egg or two. And that comes, we're talking about eggs now constantly because the price skyrocketed when the financial trouble hit. And I don't know what eggs cost, but I know they're a lot more because you go in the grocery store, you hear about it all the time. There was another egg crisis in the United States. Elmer Wheeler, the great sales trainer, the one who said, find a need and fill it. Sell, we were talking about him last week, sell the sizzle,
Were, yeah.
not the steak, etc. Was hired by Woolworth, F.W. Woolworth. It was a five and dime store. I think there's still a couple around who at least haven't taken down the sign. I'm not sure there still is a Woolworths. But anyway, they hired him years ago to come into their lunch counters and figure out how to sell more eggs. And because it was a then it was a high profit item. Why Woolworths? Well, Woolworths, prior to McDonald's and prior to their demise, was the largest restaurant chain on the planet.
Didn't
The
they have a counter where you could get Frosties or smoothies or
Yeah,
some kind of
it
ice
wa it
cream?
was a lunch counter, and
Okay.
they were shaped like like connected W's or waves. The way
Oh,
the
okay.
waitress or server could step in to one of the loops, and she'd have 8 or 9 people within arm's reach of her. And then you go down a few feet, and there's another loop, another loop. They had 29 miles of lunch
What?
counters. Figure where you are, and then
And then
map
curve it. It's not straight line.
no,
Okay.
and then map out how far you'd have to go to cover 29 miles. That's how
Oh,
much they had in lunch counters, plus, as you say, the curves. That was from the beginning point to the end of the point, and the seats were multiple, probably times 7 or 8, because of the curves every few feet. So they were therefore, if they could take one of their most profitable items and sell a lot more of it, paying Elmer Wheeler to figure it out would have been good. So he went in and sat down. I think the story was he claimed he'd never been in the Woolworths, but he sat at the end of the lunch counter and watched for a couple of hours. And he discovered something he didn't know. Uh, People put, because he'd never done it, people put raw eggs or request raw eggs in their milkshakes before it's blended up. He wasn't aware of that, so he sat there and watched it for an hour or two. And his solution was it's just simple suggestive selling. Went to work at Macy's years ago. You were required to have an add-on product for every product that was there, meaning if they're buying a spatula, a frying pan might be a good idea. If they were buying a frying pan, suggesting a spatula. If the lid was extra, not part of the set, the lid, etc. So I grew up with that, but I'd never translated it into Woolworths and eggs. So he came back to the corporate headquarters with a fat fee collected, and he said, "Here's what I want you to do. I want you to put a couple of dozen eggs at least under every counter when it looped out right there on the shelf beneath the eating counter. At least a couple of dozen to start the day." In every loop, in every restaurant, all 29 miles of lunch counters. And then when somebody orders a milkshake, I want the lady, it was almost 100% ladies in those days, to reach under the counter, palm 2 eggs, and pick them up and say 1 egg or two. Elmer Wheeler and Woolworth single-handedly created a nationwide egg shortage.
really?
With just that. It was temporary till the
Right.
farmers got word to rev up, but 1 egg or two, and enough people who'd never put an egg in the milkshakes, like him, said one, and a lot of people already liked that idea. Said, "Oh, two, that would be good." So there was actually a percentage. It was like 80% of all the milkshakes served didn't have any eggs in them when he started, and 90% had them when he finished the concept. So suggestive selling, upsell, combine things, whatever you're selling, when you're talking about selling that product or service, have something else in mind that you always suggest. McDonald's has built a rather large business with you want fries with that? And if they already
Oh,
order
I didn't
fries,
know that.
huh?
I always thought that was a joke. Do you want fries with that or, paper or plastic was the new thing, but I didn't realize that McDonald's did that, but I don't really go into places like that.
Yeah, I don't either anymore, but I used to. McDonald's was a client years ago, and they went from you want fries with that to let's say you've already ordered one of everything. There's nothing else to suggest to sell you except you want that supersized.
Oh,
And the
okay. And it's
they
so
would,
easy. You're right. It's so easy.
yeah, and they would be a huge business if that's all they did was add fries to things and supersize things. So that's sort of a spin-off of one egg or two. But always look for something else that they could buy that they perhaps haven't thought of or just need to be reminded. And
Kind of
you've
like, Christmas time. Do you need batteries for those? Why, yes, I
there you
do.
go. Absolutely. Yeah, they hadn't thought about that. But when you just remind me of a great story. I'm working in the housewares department at Macy's, and for some reason, we were next door to sporting goods, but we also had bicycles. And a guy comes in Christmas Eve to buy a bicycle for his son. And I said, sure. So it took it back and I said, here's this and this. I can't sell you the floor sample tonight. You can get it tomorrow, but tonight we need to show it. But so we have them assembled, unassembled in boxes. Is that okay? Yep. Maybe sold in a helmet or something. I don't know. And so I hand him,
Band-Aids. Yeah,
huh?
always Band-Aids, always
Oh,
Band-Aids.
yeah, yeah, Band-Aid. Yeah.
Here's a medical kit. You're gonna need it.
And plaster of Paris, so you can build his brace or his cast. So anyway, I sell him the bicycle, and I go to hand him the box. I think he'd paid by that time, and he said, "Oh no." I said, "Oh no, what?" He said, "I need to look at the contents." He said, "I'm not going to be sitting on the floor at 2 o'clock in the morning looking for bolt A, which isn't in the box. The directions say attach bolt A to this and B to this and so on." He said, "I've fallen for that one too many times." So he said, "All right if I open it?" I said, "Sure." So he opens it and he starts pulling out things. Among the things he pulled out were the directions for putting the bike together. And somewhere in America or wherever the bike was originally built, somebody was at the end of the Christmas season, had put together or put in the box their last bicycle, and uh, they were bicycled out, and they had written on the directions in bold marker's pen, "Ride like the wind, you son of a bitch."
Merry Christmas.
And I reached over his shoulder and grabbed him. I said, "I'm sorry, I'll get you another set of instructions." Uh, and he laughed and took it back. He said, "No, I know exactly how the guy felt."
And I bet it went in the kid's stocking.
Yeah, probably so.
It may
And
be part of their family treasure now.
yeah, and at 2 o'clock in the morning with a half-finished beer on the carpet in front of him, he probably looked at the instructions and laughed again because that's the way he now felt about his son. But I mean, after I was sure I wasn't going to be fired for it, I doubled over. I laughed till I cried.
I bet. And did you, and I have to ask because knowing you, you probably thought about this. You probably thought about grabbing, maybe one of the kids in the warehouse and saying, I'll pay you $10 a piece to put these together
Should
tonight,
have, but we
now.
didn't. Yeah,
Aw,
yeah.
see,
Should have had
lost
somebody on the
opportunity.
floor offering to do it
Right,
for ten
right.
dollars or whatever would have been the going rate at the time.
Missed opportunity.
But I wasn't that smart. But that gentleman had been through it once before. Apparently, bolt A was missing in something he bought last year.
With me, it's always the darn ceiling fan. I've got it up there and it's ready to go, but that last bolt, it's like, I can't let go. Now what do I do? That's when you start saying really bad words.
Oh, and speaking of eggs, you see the good news, Waffle House just removed their 50 cent per egg surcharge.
No, I didn't know they had, but
Yeah,
I don't think I've ever been in one.
do the oh, that's funny. Waffle House number one was about 5 miles from my house in Atlanta in Avondale, Georgia. And so I've eaten in the first Waffle House many times. And it's really an interesting atmosphere they've created. It's a club. They happen to serve waffles and pancakes and hamburgers, I guess. I don't know their whole menu, haven't been in one in years. But when you walk in, you're home.
Oh, yeah?
people that you've never met look up and go, "Hi, how are you?" Well,
Oh, well, that's the South, though.
well, yeah, South is part of it,
Right.
but the Waffle House is not. People, I've known people who sort of grew up at the Waffle House or spent their young adult years eating there because they couldn't afford anywhere else, who get teary-eyed talking about the Waffle House and the magic feel. You really feel it's like a Norman Rockwell painting.
I had
Uh,
no idea. I
yeah,
do remember being at a Denny's one time when I was traveling across the United States, and I wanted a salad, but it didn't look right to me, so I passed on the salad, and everybody in my party got so sick.
whoa. Well,
Me, I just ate, a burger or something and took the lettuce off. There was something about it went, I'm not eating that.
yeah, trust your gut.
Oh, I always
No
do.
pun intended.
Yeah, I
Trust your
did.
gut.
And,
Denny's
I would
is
hear
a
moaning and crying, I'm gonna die. And I was like, I'm sleeping. Can you hold it down?
Denny's is a little different in that because of their franchise thing. I have friends who have a Denny's here in town, and they do a great job with it. But I've been in Denny's where if I wasn't starving or in a where I had to order the safest looking thing on the menu.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, how can you mess up a waffle? I'm sure there is a way,
I don't
but
know.
how can you? So anyway, one egg or two was what started all that. Uh, and 29 miles, a little trivia thing, 29 miles of lunch counters and the
Yeah, that's
largest,
amazing. And all he did was look and watch and go, just double the eggs. Here you go. Pay
or
me.
triple the eggs from 0 to 2 is
Oh,
more than
yeah.
double. I don't know what it is, but it's
Yeah, I don't
more
know.
than double. But
But
he
it's
just sat there and
brilliant.
watched it. And his first reaction was when he heard somebody order an egg, he thought, for what? I mean, an egg, fine, but you didn't say over lightly or whatever. And he said it took him a few orders to figure out they were putting it in their milkshakes. He never heard of that.
No, I haven't until you told me that story. I never had either. I mean,
Well,
why would you put an egg in ice? It's just ice cream and milk, right?
yeah, and chocolate syrup if it's chocolate.
Oh, okay.
Uh, Truth is, I've talked about it frequently. I've never had one with an egg in it either because it's just never crossed my mind.
Well, it
Uh,
sounds terrible.
yeah.
It really does. But it's
Next,
probably
next,
good for you.
next time I'm in a restaurant like that, I'm going to order two, one with an egg and one the normal way. And if I don't like the egg, I can just push it aside.
Right,
I'm not
right.
sure you could even taste it. All right.
Well,
Next
come
thing on
back to
the,
this show and report.
all right.
So,
Next
okay.
thing on the list is not being out of things or running off customers. What it really is lifetime customers. You have to look at all of your customers as lifetime. It's not what they're buying today, it's what they could buy the rest of their lives or the rest of your life or the rest of your career if they're handled properly. And it comes down to little minor things. For instance, I was a food broker. My father was a food broker. I was a gopher for him, along with Jimmy Rucker. One of our jobs was to go into a store and make sure the shelves were full of our product. And we had lots of them, but let's say Hunt's ketchup. Make sure that our Hunt facings were filled up. We paid for, let's say, 10 facings in the store I'm standing in. Make sure you got 10 facings. They're
What does
yours.
that mean? What's a facing?
Well, a facing is you look at the shelf and there's Hunt's ketchup, Hunt's ketchup, Hunt's ketchup, side by side by side.
Okay.
A facing is any one of the bottles. And if you pay,
Oh,
it's like
okay.
real estate. If you paid for 10 facings, you need 10 facings, and you got enemies. You have stock boys who don't care. They just want to look full. They don't know you paid for 10. And you have the Heinz ketchup guy who comes in and thinks it'd be a good idea for you to have 8 facings and him to have 12 facings. So, so you're always battling for shelf space. But if you're out, you can change the buying habits of that person for years to come. I like relish. There's several things I put it on in, And I've used Heinz, I guess it is, relish for years just because it has lots of facings and there it is, eye level.
It's recognizable. Everybody knows
Yeah,
it.
yeah. So one day I go in and they're out of Heinz, which to me was like being out of relish. And I said to the lovely lady who works there, has become a buddy of ours. I said, "You're out of relish." And she says, "Well, that's good news. Try this." And she pointed, I don't have the name memorized yet, but she said, "This is the best relish on the planet." And
Oh.
I said, "Great." So I took a bottle. Well, sure enough, it is. This is the type of relish that is so good. I've been known to open the jar with a spoon and just take a mouthful. I mean, it is not like any relish you've ever had. But I wouldn't know that if the uh, relish guy, the food broker, the gopher for his father, hadn't let the shelves run out. That
So it's
shouldn't
his
happen.
fault. Right.
Yeah,
See, I like relish. I can't have tuna without relish
there you go.
and lots of onion.
I'll get
Otherwise,
you.
it's not tuna. I won't eat it. It's like, here, cat, kitty, 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 here you go.
I'll
They
get
can
you
have it.
the name by the next call. I'll get you the name of the one we
Okay.
ordered. It's the best relish on earth, but I only know about it because somebody let the Heinz run out.
Ah.
And so you don't run out, you don't do things to run them off. A side note or a cousin to that, we have a Mel's here in town. If you saw American Graffiti, you saw the first Mel's. It was in San Francisco, but they've been here since been in business since 1948.
Mills is a diner, right?
Yeah,
Because I
yeah,
think every little town has a Mills of some description.
yeah. Well, they have something that does pretty much the same thing, and it may have Mel's on the front, but it's one of those, oh, Mel's, that's good. I can go there. So we have one in town, and I went in it one day. We also have right across the street another one called Buttercup, and we have another one across the street called the Pub, and they all sort of serve the same thing. But I've been going to Mel's since 1948 when my family and I moved here, and I was a kid, so I sort of gravitated towards it. Uh, we went in one time. Hang on one second, I'm doing a little math. We went in one time, and this food was fine, but this lady was a real smart aleck. Maybe she was having a bad day, or it was the wrong time of the month, or I don't know what it was. But I'm a friendly guy. I make friends with everybody everywhere I go. She and I clashed mainly. I got about three insults and finally said, "Excuse me, get us another waitress." So she left and we finished our meal and everything was fine, but I never went back. That was 24 years ago.
Ooh, she
And
landed a bad reputation on you then.
yeah, and I had, as they say, a happy customer will, I don't know where the figure comes from. Somebody probably made it up, but there's something to it. A happy customer will tell five people, an unhappy customer will tell 17 people.
Or
So,
more. Go to Yelp.
yeah,
You can spread it around a lot.
yeah,
If I get really mad, I'm going to, Yelp or something like that, and I'm going to let you know what I think. And I'm
well,
articulate, so it sticks.
the this particular case, I've made a career out of telling everybody that Mel sucks.
Hmm.
You know, if you meet me in Placerville, hi, my name's Ben Gay. What do you do? I'm a writer and a speaker. What do you do? I sell cars. Oh, great. Have I told you Mel sucks? So I'm way over my 17 limit.
See, I like that. I can hold a grudge like nobody's business too. So,
So
okay, keep going.
somebody was talking about Mel's one day, and they said they have the best French fries in town. I said, I haven't been in there in years. I don't remember the French. She said, "Trust me, best French fries in town." And I said, "Gigi, if we have to put a bag over our head, let's go in and try them." Well, we went in. The girl has long since retired and moved to Alaska or something. She wasn't there, and I probably wouldn't have recognized her if she had been there. But the manager came by and said, "How's everything?" or something. And I said, "Everything's great, but I have a little free business lesson to give you. I'm a sales consultant." So he sat down and he said, "What is it?" And I told her the story, told him the story about this lady. And I said, there's a thing called a lifetime customer. And so we discussed how much I probably spent at Mel's in a, it wasn't a dining experience. If we were hungry and we were downtown and there it was. So I think we figured out about $150 a month or something like that, uh, times 12, times 40, times 24 years. And we quickly figured out that her insult had cost that store from Gigi and me about $43,200.
Don't tell me it was his mama.
That I don't know.
I would have
But,
asked.
but I said it's not one unhappy customer. It's after we did the math, $43,200. And I have told hundreds of people about the bad experience in here. He said, would you come by and do a sales meeting for us on Monday or something? I said, no, I have a pledge. I don't take local clients and you can't afford my fee, but I'll tell you the story again so you can repeat it accurately. In grocery stores, you don't run out of stuff. It's a lifetime customer. In restaurants, you don't, in any other retail establishment, you don't insult customers. Oh, speaking of that, last week we were on and I talked about giving meaningful little gifts that they'll keep.
Right.
And I went and got the paperweight that Ray Considine gave me years ago that still sits on my desk on top of whatever pile is next. So, having given out their name and number, which I won't do again today, uh, I called them from the little sticker on the back. I called them and I said, oh, and they answered with the company name that was on the sticker. I said, oh, great, you're still in business. A friend of mine, you may remember him, everybody does, Ray Considine, gave me a paperweight from you. And as I got started, and I said, I just told a few thousand people on the podcast about it and gave out your name and number. He says, who is this? And I said, what?
Did
It
he yell? Was he upset? Okay, I'm staying out
yeah,
of the way.
he
Tell me.
was, no, he was frustrated that he didn't know who I was or why I was calling. Maybe he was busy.
Oh,
I don't know. But a guy calls up to say, I've just recommended your business to several thousand people around the world with a strong endorsement and your phone number. And I wanted you to know why people might be calling. And why? Because you put a little sticker. Remember, we were talking about magnets and so on.
yeah, yeah.
They had a peel off the back sticker on the bottom of the paperweight. I said, so 25, 30 years after this was given to me, I was still able to find you, so on. But most of that was drowned out by, I asked you who you were. I don't understand this question.
Do you think he was deaf or
No, I think he was stupid and was allowed to answer the phone.
okay?
Probably not the guy who started the business 30, 40 years
No,
ago.
no.
It's
Oh,
probably
what a shame.
the son of or what have you. So I said, well, let me end with this. I will tell people that I was wrong in recommending you and tell them if they made a note not to call you. And then he started yelling. And then I said, let me tell you a Southern term. And
Bless your heart.
it started with an F, and I hung up. And my next trick, I hadn't thought about it till right now. I'm gonna go over to my desk when we're done and peel the sticker off the back for
No,
fear I
no.
might give out his name and number again. A
Oh,
total idiot. So if you're listening to this and you wrote down that company name, no, don't call them.
see, that is just heartbreaking. And I thought that was a wonderful story.
Yeah, well, the story is still good. The concept is still good. They're not throwing out a paperweight
Right.
with your business card sunk in the lucite or whatever. Everything is right, except don't call the company name I gave. Don't dial the phone number I gave. So there's another lifetime customer loss because I was getting excited about it. Been sitting there
Yeah. Yeah.
passively on my desk for a long time.
I know.
But then
And you told me you were going to go, call it and see if it worked. And I was waiting breathlessly to see what
yeah,
happened. And
it
now
answered.
that, oh,
It answered.
that is just, let's hope that it was just a one-off and he was the janitor, but I don't know.
Entirely possible.
Yeah,
We'll never know because I will never dial the number again,
all
nor
right.
recommend him to anyone. But I
Email
would
me that
say
number. I'm gonna call him. I'm
the
gonna call.
concept is still good. Get a paperweight with your name, number, business card in it, sunk in lucite from somebody, just not the guy I told you about last week. So, lifetime customers. You run out of relish, you lose a customer for life if they find a better relish. You find out insult somebody, you may have cost yourself $40,000, $50,000, or if it was an upscale restaurant, a lot more than that.
No kidding.
But always think lifetime. You're shaking a hand with somebody. Hi, I don't know this person, but it's possible they'll still be in my life 20, 30, 40 years from now, depending on your age.
Exactly.
And
And you and I were talking about my book that's coming up. And I had some visibly uncomfortable moments when I was starting to write why I did it, who I am, why this is important. But while you're talking, I've been writing down notes because I treat my clients, they're not my clients, they're my guests, pretty much the way you're talking about. I
mhm,
don't try to upsell them, but I will say, listen, do you want to meet other podcast hosts that I think you'd be a good fit for? There's so many different things that I do, but you know what the big thing with me is, Ben? You know that I'm known for people, if you wrote a book and you want to get it on a podcast, I'm probably the best person to talk to. And this is a little bit out of what we're talking about, but it does tie back. I promise it does. And I will read the book, when it lands here, and I've got hundreds of books in this room, hundreds. Your two are there. Well, several of your books are here, but I've read them 2.5 to 3 times, no joke. I've reviewed them. They're on Goodreads, they're on Amazon. I'm telling people, go find this book. This is a really great book. And to me, it's a lifetime commitment. Once you have come on my show and you're my friend, and especially if you're Damon Limby and you sent my cats $100 cat bed, we're going to be friends forever. But, I treat my guests the way you're saying, don't run out of relish, don't run out of this. Always be helping them, serving them, do whatever you can. But what I was going to say about the books is that I do read them. I'm dead serious. I read these books. And I've had so many conversations with guests because I always call you after and I'll hear, Denise, oh my God, you actually read the book. Well, I did. I read it the month before you were coming on the show. That's a whole nother process. But I guess they didn't think I really read it, that I might have skimmed through it and just wrote a quick review. I didn't. I read the book. And they'll say, oh my God, Denise, you read the book. And sometimes they're almost weepy about it. And I want to pinch heads. If you're a
mhm,
podcaster and you ask for a book that somebody put their guts and their heart and their soul in, they packaged it up, they wrote you a thank you card, and it landed on your desk and you didn't read it, I want to pinch your head. Shame on
mhm.
you. And that kind of goes back to what you're saying, don't run out. You know, just do what you can to make sure that you're always in there. You're doing something, you're being consistent.
Absolutely. Um, and They treat everybody as a lifetime customer. I've told you many
Right.
times, but my
Right.
two uh, car salespeople, two major, uh, one in Marin County, Herc at Marin Bay Lincoln Mercury. I bought a car there, was treated well, etc. And then because of contests and giveaways and so on, I bought and or leased 300 cars from him because I was treated well and followed up before the internet and all sorts of ways to track it. They would call and ask about servicing. Or they would call Marty, my secretary, and say, is he going to need the car for the next couple hours? Why? Because he's due for a service, we'll just come over and get it. So they come get my car, take it, service it, and bring it back. And I wasn't even told it was gone. So Marty knew, but that's how they do. And then he retired, sold the dealership, retired, and passed away. Moved up to this area. Sacramento was the nearest one, and my purchasing agent found a Cadillac dealer up here that he said he's really a great guy, highly recommended, etc. And I went and met him, or he came up, one or the other, and I really liked him. I had a feeling, oh my God, I don't have to sweat cars. I thought I was going to be back in the car business instead of making a phone. I once ordered 48 Lincoln Continentals in a phone call to Herc. Didn't have to go look at them, measure them, or anything. I said, Herc, you know the deal, etc. What colors do you recommend, or whatever, and delivery all across the United States, and bought 48 cars with a phone call. And so, with a new person in Sacramento, I bought by coincidence another 300 cars from him. And in neither case did I walk in and go, "Hi, I'm Ben Gay, and I'm going to buy 300 cars, and you better,
Right.
treat me right."
Worship me, worship me.
Yeah, yeah. It was just, "Hi, I'm looking for a car," and they treated me well. That's all I wanted. Stroke my head and treat me well. And one thing you just said while you were running through your takes on these things, but
Pinching heads.
you reminded me of become the go-to person. Uh,
Exactly.
Become the person that they check with. For instance, there is nothing about writing, podcasting, and 4 or 5 other things that I would do if I didn't already have a contact in that area without running it by you, because you either know somebody or you know somebody who knows somebody. It's like my magic Rolodex. It asks most questions. I either know who does it or I know one phone call to make to find out who does it. But the good news is it's not just being a nice person. When you're the go-to person, you become, with every call, you become a closer friend, someone they know, like, trust, and feel safe with. And with every call, you get first look at things.
Yes, I do.
And that's really the most important part. Do you know somebody who would invest in this and so on? Well, tell me about it. Blah 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 blah. Yeah, I know somebody. I would. So you get first look at lots of things that you otherwise wouldn't hear about. So there's all sorts of benefits, spin-off benefits to conducting yourself in the manner that we're talking about. And a little random thing I heard during the week was, and I'd never heard the term. Have you ever heard of the Disney hug?
No.
Okay. Uh, Walt, as you know, and Disney isn't what it used to be, but they still do most of what Walt set up. The Disney hug is when you're little, I guess it would apply to anybody, but they were talking about little kids. When your little kid hugs a costume character at any of the Disney parks, Mickey Mouse, I don't know who their costume characters are, but Goofy, Minnie Mouse, Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck,
I
if
don't
you
know.
want to, yeah, but whoever they have is walking around in one of those costumes. When the kid hugs them, which they do spontaneously all day long, the Disney hug is the character never breaks the hug first.
Oh,
If the little kid wants to hug you for 10 minutes, you just stand there, pat him on the head or whatever you do based on your character. But the Walt had it down to tiny little things. There are certain things they didn't serve in the park because people tend to drop them and that makes a mess. So it's not that they will, I don't know what the items are, popcorn maybe or
ice
something.
cream.
Uh,
Always ice cream.
Is it okay?
Has to be. That
Yeah,
stuff. I live in the South. If you don't gobble it quickly, it's going to wind up down on your knees or your shoes, or
yeah.
it's horrible.
I can picture a southerner eating an ice cream cone. Glomp, glomp, glomp.
No talking, no talking. I'm busy.
Yeah. But anyway, we're talking about don't run out of things. Treat every customer right when you meet. If you're selling cars, when you shake hands with some young kid in a cheap sport coat, you don't know that he's going to buy 600 cars over the next 8 or 9 years.
Right.
And the move broke it in half, but minus the move from one coast to the other, they would all be from you. The least they would be, if you were nice to me, would be 300 luxury automobiles, a few Rolls Royces, a Stutz Bearcat, Lincolns and Cadillacs and so on by treating that customer as if he or she was the most important person in the world. And keep in mind, this goes with you. You might be selling pots and pans at Macy's, but when you move over and start selling Rolls Royces, you should know who your customers are. And you call them and say, I sold you a Teflon fry pan 10 years ago and just want to tell you I appreciated that. But now I'm selling Rolls Royces. So if you or anyone you
How many do
know,
you want?
yeah, how many do you want? Yeah,
One or two?
yeah, there are six, you get a 10% discount. But look at everybody that way. And then what I loved about the Disney hug thing, besides the fact I'd never heard of it, was down to the smallest detail. Can you imagine being the parent whose kid ran up and hugged Mickey Mouse, and Mickey stood there and was nice to him for 10 minutes? The kid may
No.
not spend a lot of money with you right away, but he will. He'll grow up. But the
And he'll hear
parent,
that story all the time.
right, he'll hear the story his whole life. Bobby ran up to Mickey Mouse, and Mickey spent 10 minutes with him, hugged him, and so on. And he'd still be hugging him if the kid hadn't let go. The
Or
Disney
grown
hug,
up and
yeah, or
needed to
grown,
shave or
yeah,
something.
had to get on with his life.
Yeah.
But the Disney hug is a clever idea, and I thought that goes in every seminar from now on. And then one last thing, and oh, I know we're getting close. Are we out of time?
No, keep going. We've got a couple of minutes.
Okay. Um, on the internet, especially, you've probably seen these people dressed like bushes and they jump out and scare people. You're walking down the sidewalk and they're all over the internet currently, and a person in a leafy green outfit standing in a pot looks like a bush, and right when you get next to him, he reaches out and grabs you, or yells or something.
Oh,
And
anybody grabs me is going to get hurt.
I was thinking that as I said that. I
Yeah.
hope to God they don't grab Denise,
No.
but most people react well to it after the initial 5 feet in the air scream. They do. But I said all that to say this: the original Bushman didn't have the fancy costume that you see on the internet or television now. He had a few bushes, branches that he held up in front of him and just stood real still. He
Was
was,
his name Adam? I bet it was
no,
Adam.
his name was David Johnson,
Oh, goodness.
and he worked at Fisherman's Wharf in San Francisco. And one day, Gigi and I, we were doing a seminar and we went out just to stretch our legs. And I saw this guy jump out at some people ahead of us. And I said, Gigi, watch this. And he waited for the crowd to change. And then he did it again. And they screamed and yelled. And I repeat, it wasn't a very good costume, but you're not looking for somebody holding a bunch of branches.
Mm-mm.
So I went up and introduced myself. His name was David Johnson. We were teaching the seminar about half a block away. And I said, if I gave you $100, would you come down and talk to my people for a few minutes? This is really creative. He said, oh, yeah, and I'll do a good job. And I said, well, I hope you will. I also hope you don't run off with my $100. And I tucked it in his pocket. And I said, we're down here at room so and so. I just wanted to come in and talk about all the creative ways you can. Oh, and I said to him, as we were walking away, and he was going to show up in about an hour, I said, by the way, I'm not with the IRS. How much money do you make doing this? And this was 30 years ago. He said, about 60,000.
Ooh.
Jumping out of people going boo, $60,000 a year, I suspect tax free,
Yeah. Well, yeah.
because we get scared, and then everybody watching would run over and throw a dollar or two or $10 in the pot. So he came down. I'm up in the front of the room working, and the manager of, I'm trying to think of the name of the hotel. It's not important. But anyway, the manager comes in and he's standing at the back of the room trying to get my attention. And I said, finally, it was distracting. So I said, excuse me, what can I do for you? He said, sir, there's a man here who wants to see you, who says you invited him down. Well, he was from the area. He knew the Bushman.
Oh,
And the Bushman was rarely invited into corporate meeting rooms.
no, really? I can't
And
imagine why.
I says, is it David Johnson? He said, I don't know his name. It's the Bush. I said, that's enough. Yes, thank you. Bring him in. And in came David Johnson, dropping leaves behind him off of his branch.
He was molting.
Yeah, he did about yeah, he did about 10 minutes for the crowd, including admitting he was making 60,000 a year in 30 years ago, which would
I
be
bet that's when people really started saying, okay, I get it now.
yeah, yeah, I can do this. So anyway, that's all my notes, and we by accident touched on a lot of things that you had promised. Uh, and there's some real sales lessons in there, but you got to listen to the sales lesson.
You do, and you have to be consistent, stay in touch with people, treat them well. And, if they ever call you, and I've had this happen, I'll get some because I build websites, and I'll have somebody call me 10 years after the site was built. Some of those are still running beautifully. Denise, I don't know what happened. Can you fix this? Sure, of course I can. They don't even try to get anybody else. They know that I'm going to get it fixed for them.
Right, right.
So, get that reputation is my point. Okay, Ben, next, ooh, it's about to shut us down. So, everybody, that's a wrap for today. So, keep up with what we're sharing on the podcast each week. And I'm going to stress this, be sure to get your copies of the Closers books, the Closers Bibles, part one and part two. And those are available on Ronzoni, Ronzone books on eBay. Just type in Ronzoni books. You'll go straight there, and they come with free shipping, and it makes it easy to get your hands on these really valuable sales resources. And that way, if we're talking about a particular chapter or anything that we're going to reference in the book, you'll have the book in front of you. Ben, any last thoughts before I let you go?
No, but I appreciate you being the usual gracious hostess that you are. And I again congratulate you. I've watched your business grow and expand, and I am so proud of you.
Well, thank you. And honestly, I lay a lot of that at your feet. You've said that you were the final mentee to Dr. Napoleon Hill. Well, you're my mentor, and what he taught you is filtering down through you. I pay attention. I do. So thank you.
Bless you.
All right, everybody, we will see you next week, next Wednesday. Send us your questions about Ben's new book, even my new book, if you have questions, and anything that you would like us to ask on the podcast. We are here, we are listening, and we won't even make up too much stuff. We'll try to tell you the truth. So there's
When
there's
all
always
else
that.
when
Yeah,
all else fails,
yeah,
try the
well,
truth.
yeah, exactly. Listen, everybody, thank you, Ben. Tell Gigi hi. I love her. I love you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.